Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Today, I'm going to be talking about robot design games seriously, playful co-design methods in human-robot interaction for vulnerable populations. And I am Sawyer Collins. And to just tell you a little bit about who I am, where is my mouse?
Yes.
There we go. So I graduated last year from Indiana University, Bloomington, with a PhD in informatics and a minor in animal-computer interaction. I'm currently a postdoc at Colorado School of Mines, working with Dr. Tom Williams in the Mirror Lab. And I focus on qualitative co-design methods for embodied interactive systems, which is really just a fancy way of saying robots, right? So, and my overall goal in my research is to kind of help make research participation suck a little less, right? Because we can find so much cool stuff from studies that are really kind of boring to participate in. But how do we make it fun? So, oh my God.
Yes. So I just
do that.
Yes. And you can,
There we go. Oh, I
I know
Sorry.
the mouse would switch, but
Yeah,
different thing.
it's like not working for me.
It will.
It's working.
Yeah.
There we
It
go.
will.
There we go. Great. Let's talk about rocks.
A pet rock.
What a transition, right? So you're like probably thinking this has nothing to do with games. This has nothing to do with what, rock. So I'm going to take you all the way back to when I was an undergrad. Okay, many years ago now. And I very first starting out in research. And I was helping Dr. Selma Shabanovich, if you've ever heard the name. She works in HRI. And I was helping set up this study. And this study was all about robots that were going to interact with this group of people and play this game. And it was some sort of psych study. You know, I was just a baby undergrad. I was just there to set up the robot, right? So, but I was setting up the robots, and a participant came in and they said, well, I don't know if this is going to be any fun, but it's better than sorting rocks. And I was like, what does that mean? Well, it turns out, so the psych students at Indiana University, Bloomington have to participate in a certain number of studies, right? And the study that this poor guy had to do prior was an hour of sorting rocks, right? So why am I introducing this? Because I'm going to introduce you to two design games today, okay? And I want you to be excited about them. So let's talk about how these are a little better than sorting rocks, if my computer will go. There we go. There we go. So I'm going to introduce a card game. And yeah, it's fine.
You can close them if you, yeah. I think it's on your screen.
Well, it's not showing up on this screen. It's just showing up on that screen.
Right. Sorry. It's not showing on Zoom.
Yeah. You're good. I got it. We'll get this working. There we go. Okay, card game and a TTRPG. Card game initially started with, I liked that it was simple enough that my brain was like, okay, I like that. Good. Card game again. I thought it was cool. Like you could really see a vision coming together with some of the options like that. Card game again. I enjoyed playing this game. The game allows us to understand how the robot should look and what abilities a robot should have, depending on the problem statement and depending on different types of users. Switching to the TTRPG, this participant said, I liked that it was my stuff that I got to choose from, like my different traits and getting to see how those worked in the game. So pretty good. Yeah. I enjoyed the game, especially trying to get through different parts of the day, because those are definitely real struggles. And finally, it was neat. I liked it. Great. So we know so far, right, about design games. So far from what we can tell, they're better than sorting rocks. So let's get into the actual presentation. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of foundational information about my background, which is specifically robotics and healthcare and co-design. And then I'm going to move to the traditional co-design workshops that I initially started with before transitioning into the use and creation of design games. And finally, my future work, which is serious design games, which is pushing design games a little bit further with mutual learning. So let's talk about robots in healthcare. It's pretty physical. Here's two examples. We have the Moxie robot over here. As you can see on the bottom, there's a secure storage area this robot often is used for transporting things around hospitals, right? We have over here Robert, which is lifting a patient, right? The goal of Robert is not necessarily to transport a patient around the hospital, but rather to transfer them from like bed to gurney or bed to chair or vice versa, right? But these are very physical uses of robots, which brings us to our challenge. How do we focus on mental health within robotics, right? So how do we take it that step further? So looking at not just the physical, let's talk about socially assistive robots. So we have socially interactive robots. These are things like Jibo that you might have seen, right? They're kind of like Alexas that are embodied, that can chat with you, or kind of more like peers. We have assistive robots. That's kind of like what we just saw, right? With the Moxie and the Robert. So they're going to do something physical for you. Well, socially assistive robots kind of combines these two, okay? And it provides support through individuals through direct social interaction to support emotional and cognitive well-being. Okay, and that's more like Paro down here, which you can tell is a baby seal. It does not talk, but it does make little cooing noises and it wiggles and people find it cute, right? Great. So, mental health, robots and mental health is successful, we have seen, but very challenging. Okay, so again, back when I was an undergrad, just a baby, I started doing really deep, in-depth research with Selma about Paro with older adults living with depression. So what we ended up doing is we put Paro in the homes of older adults for a period of 6 weeks. And they got to interact with the robot, they got to cuddle with it, use it however they wanted, and we just checked in on them weekly, right? What we found is that Paro could actually alleviate depression symptoms, track depression cycles, and connect clients to their care team, all through these sensors and interactions, right? Fantastic. However, Paro is a closed system, meaning that, right, it is an FDA registered medical device. It ships the way it is. You don't get to take it apart, right? You don't get to change anything about it. You get what you get. And we can't access the sensors in it. We actually had to create a sensor collar to put on the robot in order to collect those environmental sensors, right? Or their data, right? So why does that matter, right? Why does it matter that Paro is a closed system? Why does it matter that Paro can only look like a seal? Well, let's talk a little bit about depression. Depression is incredibly prevalent and complex, right? So we have 5.7% approximately of the world's adult population is living with depression. 1 in 10 adults in the US actually take depression medication. Symptoms can range widely from depressed mood, insomnia, hypersomnia, sleeping too much or too little, under or overeating, etc. Right? And that's just the core symptoms of depression. That's not even accounting for the comorbidities. So these are other disorders or issues that can accompany depression, whether they're mental, like anxiety, physical, like heart disease, or even substance use disorder, as individuals try to kind of self-soothe and manage their mental health on their own, right? So depression is really, really complex, which leads us to care plans, right? Care plans for these individuals are tailored to the individual. They're created with their care team. So that's medications, that's certain therapeutic techniques, etc. And they're tailored to the individual, and so should the robot, right? How do we fit this robot into this care plan to that individual? And how do we balance the cost and technical difficulty of doing so, right? It's incredibly hard to make this adaptable system. Well, co-design, right? What do these individuals actually need? What are the options that we need? How do we explore that? Well, we decided to work on co-design with individuals living with depression. So I'm not going to get too far into what co-design is. I'm sure we're all pretty familiar here, given my audience, right? But I really just want to say, making sure that we know that they're experts in their own lives, right? They are bringing information to us that we wouldn't have because we don't have their lived experiences. So great, depression's complicated. We need to tailor something, this robot to that care plan. How do we do that? Well, we started talking with Mississippi State University. And they have developed this robot called Therabot, of which I have a physical display here. This has no robotic components in it. It's just stuffing, but this is the approximate size and one of the coverings that would actually go on the skeleton. And they developed Therabot originally for children that have gone through trauma to provide comfort as they were reliving or describing the trauma to adults, right? It's just kind of like that animal-assisted support, right? Which is what we were playing on, is animal-assisted therapy, right? So animal-assisted therapy, we've seen reduction in anxiety, reduction in depression, all through interacting with an animal. Can we replicate that in a robot? And we've started to see maybe we can, right? So the really cool thing about Therabot is that it's customizable. So this is the outside covering, right? We could change that to anything. Inside is just a four-legged skeleton and a little head, right? And we can change the outside covering to basically anything, right? We can change the sensors that go in it. So we can adapt that robot to that individual if they have a specific need, right? We can change the behaviors and sounds that the robot portrays, right? We can really customize this robot to an individual, but what do we need? So that's the foundations. That's where this all started, right? Because I've taken you all the way back to when I was an undergrad, and now we're kind of caught up into my grad school years when I started doing co-design workshops, all around Therabot. So we started this initial exploration. We focused on working with adults living with depression, as I said, and we worked with clients, that is, again, the individuals themselves, and clinicians from the local mental health facility, Centerstone. So Centerstone is not an inpatient facility, it is an outpatient facility. So individuals would come in during the day, they would get the care they need, like meet with their therapist, meet with a caseworker, that kind of thing. And Centerstone has agreed to pair with us and connect us with these individuals as well as participate. So we focused on the customization options that I started to mention in the last section, right? Morphology, sensors, behaviors, sounds, and etc. Etc. is there because we don't know, right? This is an exploration. The person could say something that we'd never thought of being able to adapt, right? But we also wanted to keep it realistic. So we wanted to make sure that we were focusing on the personal care plan needs. We wanted to make sure we were focusing on the technical requirements and restrictions and keeping cost realistic for the individuals.
Was this an Institute for Mental Health funded?
It was NSF funded.
Oh, interesting.
Not NIH, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. So I'm just going to quickly run through our 3 introductory design workshops that we did. And why am I bringing these up, even though they're not games? I just want to show you that we tried a wide array of methods to connect with participants, right? So we had the long form, what we call the long form participants, where we had individuals diagnosed with depression. We had 5 of these participants, and they participated in 5 one-hour-long workshops, which is pretty intense, right? So first workshop was just an intro to socially assisted robots. We gave them some examples like I have brought here for you today. We talked about sensors. We brought in a sketch artist and actually had them sit down with the individual and sketch out, what does this robot look like? This is what you're saying? No, okay, let's change it, right? And make it this like fun activity. We did we explored the home environment through what I called cognitive mapping. Cognitive mapping in HCI is often considered something very different. So I want you to think of it in the same way insofar as that you're kind of mapping how people move through a system. But we were mapping how they're moving through their home and talking to them about, hey, when you stop in this area, is this an area you would use the robot? Why or why not? Right? And how much time do you spend in that area? The next workshop focused on a phone app, which I won't get into because it's not directly relevant to the methods. And then we did a review where we went through everything that they told us. We said, great, write us a design fiction story. Actually should talk to us about what this looks like, right? Then we worked with individuals that self-reported as having a previous diagnosis. So full disclosure, these initial workshops were all run during COVID. So I couldn't access as many of my intended participants as I originally wanted to. So to expand our population, we worked with those that reported having a previous diagnosis. And we got 10 of those individuals and they participated in a 1 hour-long workshop. They kind of did the same things as all these longer workshops, but they tried to do it in an hour. That's pretty intense. So the sketching they did themselves, they did again, behaviors and sounds, phone app, privacy concerns, things of that nature, right? And then we also worked with clinician participants. So clinicians included like therapists and caseworkers. So we had an intro with socially assisted robots, again, showing them some examples. And then we played Yes Let's. And Yes Let's is an improv warm-up game. And I'm getting some nods, which is great. I love that. I actually learned about this improv warm-up game in an HCI class. And I was like, I have to use this somewhere, right? So for those who aren't familiar, Yes Let's, you start and you say, yes, let's build a socially assisted robot. Next person says, yes, let's build a socially assisted robot as a dog. And then you go around the circle until you've created your robot, right? So it was really fun. The clinicians enjoyed it. And then they gave us some feedback on client designs and privacy, again, the phone app, and again, the home environment, right? So why did I show you all these? Look at, we use so many different methods here. Interviewing, sketching, bringing a sketch artist in. We did improv techniques. Great, so much. And we found so many cool things, right? Like we found like cat and dog were really popular because people were familiar with them, right? We found natural colors were more soothing. Great. We found soft feeling to encourage touch. Great. They wanted some haptic feedback for that touch through purring. Even the dog, which is interesting to me, right? They were interested in the robot being able to lead grounding techniques. So things like breathing techniques and if you're familiar with the, like 5 things you can touch and 4 things you can see or something like that, right? And then they were really interested and kind of curious about sensors, and they were interested in the visual a little bit, a little tentative for them. Don't know about how I feel about this thing watching me, right? Physiological sensors that were overwhelmingly wanted. Why? They wanted the robot to be able to tell, like, oh, your heart is beating really quickly, or you're breathing heavily, right? Are you in distress? Let me change my behavior to kind of pull you in and pull you away from that, right? And they were really interested in being able to share all this information that this robot is collecting with their actual care team, which is really cool because that could allow them to start pinpointing, right? Hey, on this day exactly at this time, I wasn't doing well. And the robot is somehow reporting that, right? Great, wonderful. Except, how do we think about these robots beyond our past experiences, right? How do we move towards a novel future where we're not just talking about cats and dogs, right? That are brown and soft, right? Like how do we start thinking about what is actually possible? And that brings me to design games, right? So design games, what even are they? They're a gamified co-design method. Basically, you're designing through play. So it's meant to be fun. And some of you may have heard of serious games before. Those pop back up at the end. So hold on to that thought. But they really help individuals kind of explore these new realities without having to focus be on them individually, right? They can say, oh, my character went and did that thing. Oh, it didn't work out for them. Okay, right? And then they can move on. So that's one of the really cool things about games. It uses these artifacts like cards, game boards, dice, all these different things that people can touch and play with. And it may use, as I will talk about my first one, role play to elicit empathy and again, to allow for that exploration without this judgment. And it's actually been used in therapeutic settings before. So, tabletop role-playing game. Really briefly, what is a TTRPG? Many of you will probably think Dungeons and Dragons. That is exactly right. That is what I mean when I'm saying a TTRPG. So basically, you role play as a new character. This game master runs the session, takes this character on an adventure. The character has to figure out how to overcome obstacles, and it's all fun, right? But I really want you to think about a TTRPG as collaborative storytelling. Okay, it's where these individuals come together and they tell a story together, right? And in the case of this game that I'm about to present, it's the story between the researcher and the participant. So really, I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. Don't worry too much about keeping up with the rules. I just wanted to display them to you, but it's definitely one of those games that's easier to understand when you play it. So all participants were introduced to the Joy for All cat, which is this one right here. They were also introduced to Paro, which unfortunately I do not have a Paro with me. They are quite expensive, and Therabot. And the study said it basically is they chose one of three individuals' characters that I have created living with depression, and I'll show you an example of this in a second. They designed a socially assistive robot for that individual. They play a day in the life of that individual battling depression symptoms, and then they evaluate their design after completing the day. So here's an example of a character sheet that one of the individuals could choose. And you see we have a bunch of general information, but these are the important parts down here for the game. Okay, so the higher a number associated with a depression symptom means the more intense that symptom is for that individual. And same with characteristics. These are just things about that individual, they're just random characteristics, right? And the higher the number, again, the more intense that is for that individual. So you can notice there that there's 7. I did leave off suicidal ideation. I just did not feel that that was appropriate to include in this setting. Over here, we have the companion sheet. This is the robot sheet. So originally it's blank when they get it. They just have this and they say, okay, what would George appreciate while thinking about their own experiences? And they come up with a name, description, a little picture. But here's the important chunks, which is traits and abilities and sensors. And they describe an ability that the robot has and assign some number of points to it. Higher number of points, meaning it's more intense, potentially more used, right? Great. So now we have our robot, we have our character. Here's the game board. So you can see it's a 2-bedroom apartment, and they have 4 goals. These goals throughout the game are to start the day, work, relax, and end the day. And the participants actually define these goals. I just check in every once in a while. Say, hey, do you feel that you've accomplished this goal? And then we just move on, right? So here's how the game actually works. The participants decide what their character and robot will do. The same way you would do in D&D. You say, I want to go do, I want to get out of bed, right? And they may have depression symptoms that actually hinder them completing that action. So they can use the characteristics back in our other, they can use these and a dice roll to overcome whatever these are in a dice roll. So the way this works is participant requests an action, like to get out of bed. Does a depression symptom occur? If no, then the participant just completes it. They're done. They can move on with the day. If a depression symptom does occur, they pick a characteristic, roll a die, and add it together. And they say, okay, does that beat this depression score? And if does the characteristic meet or beat? I have to include the meet, because that happened a couple times, right? So if it does, then the participant completes that action. If no, this is where I start to say, okay, how can your robot support you in completing this action, right? What aspect of your robot that you've designed actually supports you overcoming this depression, right? And then over here, we have the end. So here's an example. And so the researcher may say the birds are chirping, the day is starting, the sun is shining through the blinds as your alarm goes off. And the participant would say, I would like to get out of bed and turn off my alarm, right? Great. Well, the researcher may say, as you go to turn off your alarm, you feel the need to keep sleeping and you start to fall back asleep, which is hypersomnia, right? And then I'd roll a die. Hypersomnia is 6 points, plus whatever I roll, right? And the participant would say, well, I would like to use intelligent because George is smart and he knows he has to get to work. This is a real example from a game, by the way. So a participant came up with that. And I said, oh no, your intelligent roll, the characteristic roll wasn't enough to beat the depression score. Oh no, what are you going to do? That was enough to beat. What would you like to do, right? And the person would say, I would like to use my robot's ability to purr and vibrate to wake me up, right? And so now they have their robot score here, their character score together, it beats the depression score, right? So this game worked really well insofar as participants enjoyed it, and we did find very similar things that we found before. So cat and dog were most popular, touch and natural sounds. Touch was by far the most used. And this was the first time we were actually seeing this, right? The importance of touch in this robot. Like participants would mention it before, but here we got to see just how much they planned on using that aspect. They did 27 unique activities, both with and without the robot. So they would say things like, I'm going to go read a book or watch TV or, throughout this day, right? And you saw that map that they were working with, there wasn't a whole lot there. Just a few little doll chairs and things, right? So these are things they were all just thinking of, like, what do I do during the day? And overall, all 8 indicated that they found it really helpful for understanding how to use a socially assistive robot. What does that look like, right, in day-to-day life? If I'm sitting at home and I'm not feeling well, what does it actually look like to use this robot? And that's what they got to really explore here. And really interestingly, all of them wanted to change some aspect of their robot at the end. So this game really helped them rethink their designs. They're like, oh, does that aspect actually help? So in an earlier pilot of this game, one participant said, I want the robot to be able to make popcorn, right? They went through the whole game, and at the end they said, oh, that wasn't actually that helpful. And I was like, yeah, maybe not, right? Maybe this game just kind of helps us think about it a little bit, but perhaps it could have been, right? We don't know, but now we went through this game, we saw it play out, maybe not. So the challenge then became, this TTRPG was really a collaborative story between the researcher and one individual, right? The question became then, how do we use games to further spark discussion among other stakeholders, right? How do we get our participants really to talk to each other about what they want? Well, we developed another game. This time it's called Robots for Humanity, and it's very similar to Cards Against Humanity insofar as that there is one judge and the other players present cards that they think will fit the prompt. So this is one of the short prompts. Anna is a 45-year-old small business owner. Recently, she has been quitting or giving up easily, feeling overly angry, etc. Right? It gives them some description of what this individual is going through, and then they take these activity, ability, and appearance cards and say, okay, I think this combo fits and the best, and here's my argument for why. Right? That's the game. So we have short rounds, which are very similar to Cards Against Humanity and just how I described, right? All players get to act as judge at least once. And the winning cards here are all kept at the end for this longer collaborative round. So I started with, getting them to compete and kind of discuss and argue a little bit, right? And then I bring them together and I say, great, let's work together and choose the best design for a longer story, right? A longer prompt, which is actually a story of an individual named Richard who goes through his day. And I say, how does this story change based on this robot design that you've created, right? So that was really great. Participants enjoyed it. They loved it. I love listening back to the recordings of these games because of the laughter. There's so much laughter and joy, and it's like, great, not sorting rocks. And P1 even said, I'm kind of proud of the robot designs. Yeah, I didn't think I was going to be able to come up with anything. I liked being able to match the specific functions with things that were mentioned in the stories, right? So this game helped. But the question then became, how do we ensure that participants have the background knowledge needed to make informed decisions regarding the robot's design, right? So it's not that what we're finding is participants are kind of struggling with understanding, like, what even is a sensor, right? What does that mean? If you don't work in robotics, you may not have had this experience, right? Well, that brings me to the final portion of my talk. Bye, Zach. Serious design games. So taking design games further with mutual learning, this is my current work that I'm actually moving towards with Palm. So we created serious design games. Remember I mentioned that serious games come up again. So design games are games that are explicitly meant to extract design insights. Serious games are often games that support learning outcomes. So my question became, how do we combine these into a single type of method, right? Well, we take the researcher knowledge, so background knowledge on the research space, in this case, robots, right? And we feed that into this game. And then we take the participant knowledge and they feed their lived experiences and values and preferences in the game, right? The game elements is where the exchange of knowledge happens. And we use mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics from Henkel's MDA framework in order to manipulate those game elements and to support this mutual learning. And then out plots design insights. And hopefully the participant as well walks away with some new knowledge. So looking back at the two games I talked about, right? So there's two that I've done. I've already completed them. So why are they important to serious design game development, right? Well, in the Roll for Robot, which is the TTRPG, they learned what SARs were minimally, but they learned how they could potentially be beneficial to them by actually getting to test these different aspects they were interested, right? So P7 said, yeah, I honestly never thought about it before. I knew like I wanted an emotional support animal of some sort, but I also don't think that I could take care of a real pet. So thinking of something like this is interesting and could be helpful, right? And then for Robots for Humanity, the card game, they learned about robot components. So if you remember the cards, we actually had different component cards, right? And they learned about design. So P5 said, I don't know anything about design. So I guess it helps me really see like what different options for something like these would be, and just how like extensive, I guess, it can be to like the process of designing and how much you can actually put into something like this. So my future directions are going to be actually applying this framework of serious design games into a game moving forward and doing it intentionally and actually measuring the different learning aspects as they occur, right? So I'm really interested in exploring the use of design games also outside of healthcare. So one of the things that I'm working with Tom on is the development of a socially assistive robot for the unhoused and what would that would look like, given the narrative that is currently surrounding robots and the unhoused. And I'm really curious about working actually with roboticists. Like, how do we use design games to help roboticists think about designing for different populations, right? How do we use this kind of joyful participation in play, right? Which brings me back to the rock. I hope, right, that you've seen that this type of participation is more fun, it's still supportive, right? We still got great design insights, we still got all these great stuff, but it was better than sorting rocks. It wasn't boring, right? So my final takeaway is basically imagining future robot designs is really difficult, right? It's difficult even if you work in robotics, but it's really critical for customizable care plans. Design games support individuals in imagining alternative futures and robots designs, right? That's what they indicated. And serious design games is this framework that I'm building and supporting and moving forward on now to support mutual learning that supports the co-design through gamification. So that is my talk. I sped through it a little fast, I think. But thank you so much.
What's one example of a robot innovation that happened because of the design game?
We looked at within the TTRPG, that one directly influenced the options that we have for Therabot now, which we have a cat and a dog. We did find that in the initial studies, but we wanted to confirm it by actually seeing what that interaction would even look like. Would it look like just like a cat and dog, or would it be something else? And so through the game, we got to say, okay, we can kind of see how they're interacting or thinking of interacting with this robot, right? So it kind of confirmed more of our previous findings through the cat and dog. And so now we have this dog still, because this is the original, this was the one for kids, right? So we just left this one. And we have a tabby cat as well. So.
And you tested that
they are currently in the homes of adults. So we're in the process of actually testing the Therabot and its customized.
So how do you test?
So we give them the option. We give them a couple options, the things that they can choose for the robots, like cat or dog. Yeah. They can choose certain sensors that can be real easily switched out. And then we give them that. And right now we're leaving it in their home for a period of a month. Okay. And they get to interact with it however they want. It's very similar to how we tested with Paro. What we're testing now is like, does this adaptability actually kind of matter, right? Does this change actually matter? Or is Paro actually enough? And we were wrong all along, you know? So, yeah.
Sort of begs the question, why not just get a pet?
So, yeah, I love that question. I almost included a slide from my dissertation defense about that, because that is the question that I got my entire PhD career. Why a robot, right? And so there's a few reasons. One is just the care that it takes for a live animal, right? If you don't take care of a live animal, there's real world repercussions for that, right? Whereas if you neglect a robot, okay, you just kind of plug it in next week, right? And you can kind of jump back in, right? So there's the animal that we're thinking of, but there's also the individual, right? Because there's the sensors that are within the robot that can help us really, like I said, track these depression cycles. So when we start to see periods of like, they're not turning on their lights, there's the robot's not picking up any light. Maybe they shoved the robot in the closet, but maybe they're not doing well, right? And after a certain amount of time, so the care clinicians were really interested in, can it ping us in an emergency? So if the lights haven't been turned on in 2 days and there's no sound, will this robot ping me and say like, this client is not doing well, right? So
what are the top three sensors? I mean,
Mhm.
sensor technology is hard.
Yeah.
So what are the top three that provide any valuable feedback?
Mhm.
I can see the lights are out.
Yeah, ambient light, ambient sound, and touch specifically. So that I can't remember the type of sensors that they're sewn in. So you can actually see like where the robot is being touched. And I didn't include this in this talk just because of time. I did do an entire study just on behaviors and where they would touch the robot, and what that could potentially indicate, but I just didn't get here for time. So that is something I have explored as well. Is more specifically, what does it mean to touch? Where? Why? How much pressure?
So what kind of behavior have you found out? Observation, I mean,
Yeah.
data collected from the pets.
Oh, you mean like what have we found out so far
Yeah.
from Therabot being in the homes?
Yeah.
So far we've only had 3 participants, so we haven't looked at it in depth yet. That's our next step. We want to hit 5, and then we're going to start analyzing the data and then see if we need to continue and see how the study's going. We're going to check in essentially because we've had a lot of technical difficulties with Therabot. Where it gave out on one of our last participants. So yeah, so we're trying to make sure that moving forward, it's good. We did find very interesting. One participant, we had 2 Therabots, right? And they looked identical, basically. And we took the robot, we put it in the home of this adult for I think it was in there for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. And then they were having an issue with the robot, so we had to go switch it out, right? And we thought, okay, we'll just tell them we're taking this robot and repairing it, and but we'll actually give them the other one because we have 2, right? They hated that. They immediately picked. We couldn't notice the difference, but they were like immediately, "This is not my robot. This is not my robot. This is not the robot I took to my family. This is not the robot
Not the same
they
behavior.
bought." Yeah. I honestly, it looked exactly. It was running the same software, but they.
No, it was the bonding.
Yeah, there's something that he picked up on that was like, I know this isn't my
So
robot.
does the software calibrate itself to the user, or does it develop a behavior that's unique and individual?
It is supposed to, yes. That is the goal.
No, I mean, I'm wondering what was the signal that the person saw or felt?
Mhm. Yeah, so this is all being run back in Indiana. And obviously I'm not there, so I didn't get to speak with this participant one-on-one. This is just what was reported to me from the grad students that are currently doing the animal testing.
Did the person get told, we're swapping you out?
No, that I know. We just told them we were gonna, fix it up and we'll bring it back. But we had another one, so it was like, they're identical. Well, yeah, nope. So that's something really interesting to explore is, right, where are they noticing, where is this connection, right? That this is my robot. So
Well, it would be explainable if the robot developed specific behaviors based on experience with the user. That would be a plausible explanation.
but so this was only maybe 2 weeks, so it wasn't anywhere near the full study. By the end, it's supposed to have more adaptive.
Right, but it could be thread when you
Maybe,
cut it and
yeah.
it's different.
Yeah, so we used all the same fur. We actually worked with the theater department at Indiana University Bloomington to develop the skins, the coverings, right, for Therabot. So that could be possible that the hair just wasn't trimmed to the exact length, or maybe the collar was sprayed in a different way, or it could have. There's a lot of like reasons.
So in all these cases where you played the games with
Yeah.
people, were you the researcher or were there several researchers doing?
It was me and my undergraduate research assistants
So you're an experienced game master.
I do actually enjoy running.
The success of this depends on the researcher being an experienced.
Yes, yeah, having some knowledge of
Because it's about
games.
storytelling, and so your job is to carry the story along.
Yes, yeah, with the participant. It's
With the
yeah.
participants, and also with your goals of what you want to learn in mind. I mean, that's a lot packed into your head in this participation.
Yes, and so part of so I would like to release the TTRPG with just the rules and allow other people to try testing it out. That's one of my goals, is actually to release all of these games and make them just available like on my website, like come download the supporting stuff.
I mean, I know I could never do it. I could not be you. I could not be a researcher. I would fail. And that's no shade on me, just like it takes a certain set of skills to execute your design method. And that you're sort of burying your light in a bushel, is that you're not celebrating your own role in explaining the story, it seems like.
I see
know
what
what
you're
you
saying.
know, and I don't know, like, how would I learn to be a successful serious design game researcher?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I recently submitted a paper to DIS that's all about the serious design game framework, and it breaks it down in much more detail. It breaks down the previous games that I've used as well, their components, and how it fits, and describes basically steps that you can take in order to develop these games. Yeah.
Mark, do you remember any of the psychological study outcomes for the pet rock era? There's some serious stuff that happened.
There was definitely, and a lot of money was made.
And you brought up the rock.
Yeah, you brought up the rock.
Yeah.
No, I
But
don't.
some real, there was some real psychological,
I fully believe it.
People got dependencies to their rock.
I fully believe it. Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, everybody had a pet rock.
It's a little wearisome, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we got mood rings.
Yep.
Well, some of us did.
I never had a pet rock. I never
You
did.
did?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm emotionally damaged. Well, there's another question. So in these days of large language models, could a large language model be the researcher and carry the people along in this conversation?
So this is actually something that Tom and I have discussed. And looking at the implementation of LLMs within a design game that's based on like a storytelling framework. It's not something, so I only have 1 year left with Tom. So it's not something that we're expanding into right now, but it is certainly a direction that I could see potentially going to. And with an LM, you have the benefit of being able to like run it over and over and over and over and over again, right? Without having me having to sit there for 18 hours while the person tries all the options. So it's definitely something I've thought about. And I've also thought about design games within like virtual, like video design. What does it mean to do design in a video game? As like, how does that function? So I think there's so many directions. I'm very, very excited about design games. And just like I said, just like what I call joyful participation. Just play, right? Like this week research and talking about this stuff fun.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna have to go, sir. Thank you so much. Very
thank
exciting.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Interesting and challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any question on Zoom?
Oh,
Any question from the Zoom? Yes. Yes,
Oh, thank you.
Sophia. Yes.
Hi,
Okay.
hi, Sawyer, really interesting.
hold on. Sorry.
Can you
Try
hear
one
me?
more time. Yeah.
Try
Okay,
again.
hello, hopefully you
Hi.
can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I also do co-design, and I was really interested in this question you brought up about moving the co-designers from discussing past experiences towards imagining novel futures. Can you say a little bit more about how you think, I mean, I have my own ideas about why, but how you think that these design games enabled them to shift into a more designing for someday kind of orientation?
Mhm. Yeah, so games actually have been studied and they do increase, let me stand here so you can see me. They do actually increase like things like creativity, they increase cooperation. You know, these are all things that we kind of know already. Have been kind of studied about games. So the idea is right that we would kind of harness what we already know about games and use that in or with paired with some of our more typical designerly questions in order to kind of explore together, right? And so these games, particularly the TTRPG, because it was so story heavy, right? Participants would start to think like kind of a couple steps ahead of what they were currently doing about like, okay, well, this is what I need to do, right? And even in that case, right, they're not just thinking about this immediate, they're thinking about the future, right? So really harnessing, that creativity and cooperation and things from these games really kind of helps people chat about what they want and imagine and think about like, well, this isn't just going to help me tomorrow. What's going to help me, with my fourth goal of the game rather than maybe my first goal of the game, even though I'm here at the first goal, right? How does this tie in? So that's kind of the hope to moving forward with serious design games is that it will not just make the design process more fun, but it will actually make learning about these systems more engaging. So it's kind of like a 1-2 punch.
Thanks.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, when you're left with Tom and then
Yeah,
faculty job.
that's the hope. That's what I'd like. I really would love an opportunity. I love working with students. I mean, obviously, but but I really love this research, and I would love the opportunity to bring more students in and explore it further.
Are the companies that make these, are they employing researchers like yourself?
So the Joy for All are made by I believe Hasbro.
Okay.
So Purple here in the middle was made by just researchers. Oh, Purple's still on.
Is Hasbro in the business of specially assisted robotics?
They do not advertise them as such.
Uh-huh.
But they're often used in research as such. So they will say like, oh, it's great for like, your elderly grandparent or something. They will say those kinds of things because we have so much research.
They're not FDA approved.
But they're not FDA. Like with Paro is, right? The seal.
Right. So who makes Paro?
Dr. Shibata he was a researcher and now it's a company.
But it's not,
No, he is the.
I mean, look, it seems like there might be large amounts of money involved in selling socially assisted robots like this. But I'm wondering whether there's actually researcher jobs or whether those companies are sponsoring your work. And the answer is no, they're not. But the question is, why not?
So the Paro is, like I said, FDA, it's registered.
Yep.
And it's currently used in nursing homes. And he does work with other researchers like Dr. Shabanovich, my advisor. And then we also, back at IU with Dr. Shabanovich, we're working with Toyota to develop a QT robot, which it kind of looks like it's about yay tall, it's tabletop, looks like a little astronaut. But companies are expressing more and more interest in developing, particularly for older adults.
Right, age tech.
So there is that. But for looping it back to my future My dream is to stay in academia because, not just because I love the research, but
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I'm not saying, sorry, you should go to industry, but
Oh.
rather industry should support Sawyer's research. And
Oh,
the
okay.
question is, if Sawyer finds himself a job
Mhm,
in an HCI, HRI, or robotics program,
mhm.
then where does he go to get money to support his research?
Mhm.
And it seems logical that the answer would be, if you're studying these kinds of
Mhm.
animals, then those companies should be interested if your thesis is right
Yes, yeah.
or
Yeah.
plausible, then these companies should be investing in that question because they can use you to make better designs for their.
Yeah, and Toyota is doing that. And Haru is the robot from Honda. Honda is also kind of poking around. I flipped those.
Companies are competing for this market. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is Ford?
Not to my knowledge.
I mean,
All right.
yeah, all right.
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
They should be doing research.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
You know any Korean companies, car companies that are in this business?
No, no idea.
The two big ones that I know of are Toyota and Honda, and I know that the one that starts with a K was looking into it.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yes. Yeah, they I know that they've been poking around as well. But as far as like Hasbro goes,
Kill set up.
yeah. So
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
that was invigorating.
Yeah, good. Invigorating is good. I'll take it.
Full of energy. That's nice. Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right.